It must be very perplexing if you are a friend of the former royal known as Meghan Markle. First you're in, then you're out. I mean, look at Jessica Mulroney. Look at all of those people that have gone before. It's very hard to keep up with exactly what Meghan wants from you as a friend. If you think about it, she even got rid of one of her family members because apparently, well, the palace had told her to, which, as I pointed out, was ridiculous. There was no reason for that particular family member not to attend the wedding. So for some inexplicable reason, this family member was wiped off, but then brought back in, some might suggest, when useful for a documentary on Netflix. You get the picture. Now, here's where this gets really interesting for me, because once again, despite showing outward sort of emotion and desperate for friends, etc., well, suddenly at the 11th hour, well, let me explain. Morning, nice to see you, chums. Thank you so much for joining me today. This is a beautiful church here in the very heart of Mayfair. It's called Fathers. This is on Farmers Street, if you want to come and find it. And it's the Church of the Immaculate Conception, a wonderful place. What I find interesting is that clearly these were communities back, when these churches were built. And sadly, it's just not there now, is it? That sort of level of community. Everything's built up around it, but it's nice to see they've stood their ground, particularly in our Christian country, you know what I'm saying. What I find fascinating about this story is there could be a lesson to be learned from this. As I said, when you look at somebody like Meghan Markle, she's had wonderful opportunities to cultivate friends in the highest of places, and she's tried, make no mistake. On a recent interview, podcast, whatever you want to call it, with Emma Gerd, or I'm not quite sure how you pronounce her name, Gerdy or whatever. Well, if you remember, and this has happened previously as well with the other woman, all Meghan really has to go back to is this particular point in her life. Her biggest success, even though over here in the United Kingdom, the tabloid media insisted on calling Meghan a Hollywood star. She'd never ever got anywhere near the gates of Hollywood like that, but it suited their purpose at the time. They wanted to embrace this brand new, exciting, younger woman into the monarchy, and why not attach something like that? But we all knew basically it was at cable TV level. Now, at the recent interview, as I say, with Emma for Inspire, once again, rather than the soap story, Meghan trotted out about her time, 7 seasons on Suits, and how big the cast and crew were, and all of that sort of stuff. And that's why she liked making the Netflix show, right, with 80 crew for a cooking show. So just equate that, right? You've got a drama with less people on it than you have for a cooking show with 2 people in a rented kitchen. Can't seem to stick to the plot. But here's where it gets interesting, and I've mentioned this before. You see, Patrick J. Adams, her co-star, along with many others, attended that spectacular, well, orchestrated reality, apparently, which Meghan described it as, her royal wedding at St. George's Chapel, Windsor. And then all the cast were invited, seemingly to fill the pews where there was no family members. And they took it in their stride. They really enjoyed it. It was a marvellous historical moment in their lives. Patrick even went online and basically attacked the British monarchy in her defence. Then he fell foul, of course, and well, put up some pictures, and I mentioned that before, quickly had to whip them down and totally apologise. But of course, Meghan put her own up, no, that's not a problem. And here's where this gets really confusing, because they've reached out to her time and time again for their Suits sort of podcast follow-up stuff. Meghan apparently doesn't have the time, and if the time is right and all that, but she's time to pop up on everybody else's podcast. Now, apparently, the penny has finally dropped, and they've realised that, in fact, well, unless they're useful again, there is no way that she's coming back on. Now, this might elevate the podcast, to coin a phrase, and you may think I'm being a bit sarky, but, another cast member into the mix does sort of help, and I'm sure they would be respectful, kind, and stick to the plot of whatever she wanted to go to, just to get her back on board. But seemingly, even though she wants to use the show whenever she has the opportunity to remind people that, well, I was on 7 series of Suits, and yes, it was incredibly popular, and she refers to it, of course, as her show. Well, right now, whether you're Patrick J. Adams or the other female cast members, no, not interested. And let's not forget, the reboot of the show was a failure also. But according to an insider, Meghan knew it would be because, well, guess who was missing? I'll leave that bit to you. Neil Sean in the very heart of Mayfair.